Hello, and thank you for checking out this video. Today I'm joined by Maria, who is an online engineer who works on the Formula One franchise as an online engineer at Codemasters. So during our conversation today, we unpack what Maria's role is as an online engineer, and we also explore her experience as an online engineer in the games industry. So some really cool topics that we go through today. Just before we get started as well into this video, I just wanted to take a moment to remind everyone that I'm still seeking volunteers to film a video with me, like this one and the previous one with Paul. It doesn't matter in terms of what your role is in the games industry. I would love to explore your experience, maybe outside of games, and then join in the games industry, or your experience in games as a whole. So please do get in touch, whether it's through LinkedIn or my email. And yeah, I'd love to share your story on my channel. Thanks. Enjoy.
Hi, Ben. Hi, everyone. My name is Maria, and I'm an online engineer here at EA. I work with Codemasters team on Formula One franchise.
Let's go through my first question then. So, as you mentioned there, you're an online engineer. I believe you work on the F1 team here at EA. So what I would love to know is tell me about your role and what a typical day may look like for you.
That's correct. I'm working on F1 team for now, and well, the typical day of online programmer is not that different from any other programmer's day. The first thing I do in the morning, I log in and check if there are any issues with the servers or if anyone needs support in the online channel. After that, I'm opening the Visual Studio and start the work. Depending on the feature I'm assigned to or the project state, it can be technical design, it can be drafting some APIs for the client programmers, discussing these APIs with them, just working on the feature, bug fixing. Other examples of the work could be, for example, working on tools. As an online engineers, we work with customer support and live operations team. So if they need something for adjusting live configuration, or they need some support on exploring players' accounts to find some errors, maybe to help them fix something, or actually deal with cheaters, we also work on portals and some background stuff for that. I guess what is different from a gameplay programmer or UI programmer, we don't really use the game client that much. We usually have our own tooling, be that console, be that some online portal, but we don't really launch the game engine that often.
Would you have any sort of communication with those teams at any points?
Yes, of course. Like, we often talk to designers, we often talk to game teams, again, to discuss the feature we are assigned to. So these are our closest peers. Of course, I communicate a lot with other online programmers to see who's up to what and what, let's say, global technical decisions we are going to make that are independent from the features.
Awesome. And I think that's a nice segue onto my next question. And obviously that relates around teams and who you collaborate with. So how does your role interact and collaborate with other teams and departments within EA?
So, as I mentioned already, we work with designers and game client programmers. Mostly UI and gameplay ones. We discuss specific APIs, we discuss the data flows, we discuss the limitations of the features, and also an important point is the tools and different debug commands that can help designers and others to work with the online features if they need some information, statistics and such. Also, speaking more globally, if we're not talking about feature teams or specific features, obviously online engineers are held in contact with more global teams at EA. For example, digital platform teams, where we work on some shared services which are accessible within EA as a group.
Awesome. So would that mean that you have effectively two different types of stakeholders? Do you have, and what I mean by that is, do you have internal teams as your stakeholders building features for different teams? And then to me, it sounds like you're also involved with players, stakeholders, in terms of like maybe players are outlining issues that they're having as well with online services. Is that correct?
No, indirectly. We are working on the tools for customer support. to help players, but we are not interacting with players or their complaints or claims.
Right, I see. Okay.
If that was the question.
Yes, it is. Yeah, thank you. That makes sense. I guess from your previous experience, you've obviously already worked in games in an online development capacity. So I guess factoring that in and coming into here, what would you say has been the biggest learning curve for you?
Well, that's funny because the biggest learning curve was not technical for me.
Okay.
I'm used to work on games with fictional words and fictional characters, be that sci-fi or fantasy related, but it's the first time that I'm working on something which is connected to real life IPs. Like I joined EA Sports and Racing, and the aim of the product is to make the game as close to original sport as possible, but still keeping it a video game. So I was learning a lot about licensing, about how we communicate to corresponding IP holders and such. That's one of my biggest learnings so far.
Wow, I never thought about that, to be honest. So how have you gained that knowledge then through that learning?
So I guess the most learnings are coming from what we are allowed to license and use in the game and what we aren't allowed. So it goes into which items are available, which events you can set up. Because for fantasy world, well, I mean, you can probably put a battle royale into everywhere. I don't think it's going to work for Formula One, right?
It'd be an interesting concept.
But yeah, indeed. So mostly things like that. As I mentioned, nothing technical.
Okay. And just another question there. Are you an F1 fan yourself, a Formula One fan?
I used to, like, I watched Formula One from the end of 90s, since 98 till 2006. Then I stopped, and well, now I'm back again.
Nice. So this has reignited that love for the sport.
Yes.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Excellent. Okay, so still on the theme of F1. So you work on the F1 team as an online engineer and joined after the F1 2022 had shipped. So how have you found the work you've been involved in, and what does that look like?
Well, unfortunately, I can't really go into details about the work I've been involved, but what I'd like to mention is one of the first features I got for my onboarding. It was a pretty small one, but the code was deployed to the production within the first couple of months of my employment, and that's what I found awesome. So like, it's a perk of working on a live game. At least it's a perk for me. That's how I find it. So shipping the title doesn't mean that your job here is done, especially for the online engineer. There is a lot of things that is going to support in updating seasons, adding new content and such.
And I imagine, excuse me, that would involve obviously building new features. Even though you're in that live environment state, you are still effectively building on the game, building new features. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And in your previous experience in the games industry, maybe before EA, how have you found, I mean, obviously I'm talking from working in recruitment, I'm not an engineer myself. So how have you found going from that in production stage to that live stage? Does anything change from being an online engineer?
A lot of things change because before you actually hear the players, you don't always know what is going to break in terms of performance and capacity. You can usually test performance of something visual of the game client and such on different configurations, but it's sometimes hard to predict how players are going to use the online features, how many of them are going to use them, and actually what load is going to await your servers. So the fun starts only when we hit production.
And one other thing as well, from being a gamer myself, how stressful is it when a game goes live for the first time? I can only imagine that your area of work is the first to be hit when a game is first released, right?
Well, depends on the game, but yes, if there is a huge online component, then players are going to use it.
And how is that? Is that just all hands on deck just to make sure and try and get things working?
It depends on the project and the studio. Sometimes you have a bunch of engineers who are on call, and of course, obviously, the whole team is going to be on call during the launch, watching, monitoring, going through the dashboards of performance, of how many users we have in the game currently, just to make sure nothing's broken. that the experience is there, no one is experiencing any issues. And well, I mean, you obviously heard about first day patches, second day patches. This can happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. That makes sense. Thank you. So, as we previously mentioned, before moving to EA, you worked at Ubisoft. So you've continued that journey of staying in the games industry. And I was curious to see what's motivated you to stay in the games industry as a whole.
Well, that's easy. Nothing motivated me to look elsewhere. I've been playing video games since I was a kid, and then right after I finished university, I started my journey in the industry. I did make an attempt to go to the big tech a couple of years ago, but like I spent a year there just to understand that, okay, I love video games and I'm going back.
Awesome. And we're glad to have you back. So we've joined EA. You have joined EA remotely. So I believe, and please forgive me if I'm wrong, you are in Germany?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
I am in Berlin.
Berlin, and your team is in the UK, or most of your team is in the UK. So how have you found joining a team and also working fully remote?
Well, most of us are used to working from home now, right? But it's
Yeah.
one thing that everyone is forced to move to home office, and it's the different thing to have a hybrid model. So honestly, it was one of my greatest fears to join the team in a different country remotely. Like, what if something breaks? What if I won't be able to fit in the team while not talking to them to the office, while not seeing them live? And man, I'm happy that it worked out. Like, F1 team was very welcoming. Onboarding was nice. Like, I was able to find all the documentation I needed. I was able to get the support I needed. And right now it's, well, as you said, it's been almost half a year and I'm really happy here. Of course, there were a couple of technical glitches in the beginning, but once they were sorted out, just great.
Awesome. I'm really happy to hear that you've had a good onboarding in terms of that process and you enjoy the work that you're doing. I am speaking to other team members within EA at the moment. I've spoken to a couple of rendering engineers already, and I've also spoken to some that previously worked at EA as well. So the most recent conversation I had with the two rendering engineers, they have both joined EA, fully remote, one from Germany and one from the Netherlands. And they mentioned to me around a buddy system that they had when they first joined from an onboarding perspective. Did you have anything like that, or was there anything that surprised you from an onboarding perspective that really helped?
Yes, I also had a buddy, and that was very useful because I had a go-to person to whom I was able to ask my questions. There was my manager, obviously, as well. As for the surprising, I was positively pleased with the onboarding videos about EA history in general.
Also, anything catch your eye from that?
Yes, the videos tell you the history of EA, starting like from the early years and then going through the years where the performance wasn't the best. And for me, it was surprising that this was included to the section for the newcomers, but I really like the honesty.
Nice, glad to hear it. How have you been able to leverage the skills and experience that you've gained in previous roles and bring them to your current position?
Well, my current role is quite similar to my previous role in terms of technical stack and the domain knowledge I need. So one of the benefits is I'm not asking the question, what do I have to do? It's rather the question, okay, I have an idea what I want to do. How do I leverage the resources and tech we have in the studio and at EA to achieve it? That's if we are talking about the hard skills. From the soft skills perspective, I used to be a hiring manager at Ubisoft, and we had to onboard a couple of engineers during the pandemic years. Of course, they were joining remotely. And what I did, I tried to reverse the experience I as a manager had to see what information my manager might be missing when I join from the remote location. Like giving enough information about my onboarding, about any issues, be they technical or others. And also I came up with a list of questions about procedures, about tech stack, about like just different areas of the work in the studio that I want to cross off my list. And okay, when I have this knowledge, I think that I'm ready to start contributing successfully.
Awesome. And just going back from a technical perspective then, so obviously I know people may think that online programmers just do the same thing in each company and have the same responsibilities. Has anything changed from a technical perspective from maybe the likes of Ubisoft to joining EA in terms of responsibilities?
Yes, I would have that say that here I have a bit more responsibility that I had in Ubisoft with regards to environments, deployment, and just in general work on, well, not services orchestration, but basically supporting the dev environments and anything related to. In Ubisoft, there were different roles. So as an online engineer there, you would mostly do the coding of the features and services, and then you would have a lot of other separate teams to do the deployment orchestrations and such. Whereas here, I feel that I have a shared mix of these responsibilities, and that's more up to my liking. Also, one thing that has changed, I do get to work on the game side of things a bit more than I used to.
You can't just say that and stop talking. What tell me a little bit more about that then. That's interesting. So what aspects?
What I'm talking is not about really the game features, but as an online engineer, you are supposed to work on services and maybe on the API layer that, okay, as a client programmer, I want to have this data, and then you provide an API and maybe something else, very thin layer on the client of how the gameplay programmer is going to interact with the data that you send them. And here I got a chance to be this gameplay engineer, sort of, to write the layer in between UI and online code to basically parse and transfer this data for UI programmers.
Awesome. And for someone that's not an engineer like myself, what does that mean?
So in Google Chrome, if you press right click, you can see the source code of the page. This is just a lot of code and maybe some data which is passed somewhere. Usually what you get from as the response from any call to a service is an amount of bytes, some data. Then this data is brought into the format that is actionable and actually convenient for UI programmers to present it and draw all the nice forms and do all the magic with animation and things. So I'm working both on conveying the data and parsing it and basically brushing it up for UI to ready to use it.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. Yeah, no, thank you for that. Thank you for explaining that. I'm going to throw another question in here that I haven't added to the list, and I think it's going to be relatively easy for you to sort of explain it. But working as an online engineer on F1, as me being a player, what type of features would you be involved in that as a player I would interact with as an online engineer?
Basically, it actually starts as soon as you enter the game because you have to be authenticated against EA services. So this is one of the type of the integrations that you need to do. Then everything that is stored in your online account, be this, let's say your F1 life progression, customization of your character, and anything that you do not in the single player career, but what it touches multiplayer and online components, that's where you hit online engineering.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. And joining EA and remaining in the games industry, would you say that this has changed your career goals or what you would like to do in the future?
Joining EA hasn't changed my career goals. I was aiming for a tech director role in some distant future, and the aim is still there. The only thing is tech director's responsibilities and expectations from a tech director, they differ from company to company and even from studio to studio. So now I just need to adjust to expectations and requirements of Codemasters.
Okay.
Speaking of future plans, I was considering moving to other countries to maybe find a more interesting job. But well, thanks to joining GA, I'm now able to work on the game I love, but staying in the city I love, which is win-win.
Awesome. So by that, did you mean if you wanted to work on something that interests you in regards to studio or the game itself, you would have to have moved? Is that what you mean? You would have to have relocated?
Yes, like a couple of years ago, there weren't that many remote options, and I was very happy to learn that currently I have this opportunity.
Excellent. And just going back to your career aspirations in terms of reaching that technical director level, would that be reaching that level and focusing and specializing on online engineering still, or do you think that you may gravitate to another different area of game development?
I would like to stay closer to online, but still maybe have some experience with the gameplay code.
Okay, excellent. I feel as though from gaining that gameplay experience so far at EA, it's made you a little bit more hungry for it. Would you say that's the case, or?
I think I was hungry for that even before. It's just now I got the opportunity.
Okay, awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so in terms of application process then and things and your experience with joining EA, so you didn't really come through the traditional way to EA. And what I mean by that is you didn't submit an application, you were effectively headhunted for a position. So I'd love to know how you found the recruitment process and anything that you'd like to mention.
Well, I had a chance to speak to multiple recruiters during the way, and what I found impressive is that even though my mails passed through multiple hands, nothing was lost, nothing fell into cracks. And for all the interviews, I got timed feedback. I got good feedback for the coding test. All my questions were answered timely. So, and even a month after I joined, one of the recruiters got back to check on me. So, a huge shout out to your team.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that you had a great experience. Obviously, everything doesn't always go that way with recruiting and onboarding. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that went well. Is there any advice that you would give to maybe any engineer that is interviewing with you, whether it's through headhunted, application, referral, any other ways? Any advice that you'd give to an engineer that might be going through that recruitment process with us?
I would say that you don't need to stress out.
Yeah.
No, honestly.
Okay, excellent. Glad to hear it. Awesome. Okay, my last question for you, and I think it's an important one. So what advice would you give maybe to an engineer wanting to work in the games industry, or maybe an engineer that's already working in games that maybe wants to shift to potentially like online development, for example?
You're already working in video games, and if your studio has the corresponding online department, talk to your manager, talk to people from department to maybe identify some smaller tasks that you can pick up. During my years in video games, I saw people moving to online from gameplay roles, from UI roles. I mean, needless to say, I saw the opposite transitions as well, where people from online went to gameplay and so on. So everything's possible here. In general, if you want to go into the games industry, well, I mean, first things first, just try it out. Don't hesitate. If you are a backend engineer or if you had previous experience with online services, most likely you have either enough or some qualification to be considered a good applicant for online engineer position. For the gameplay part, I'm not the best person to ask, honestly, but I guess either start a pet project to play out with some game engines or take a part in Games Jam.
Awesome. And through your experience working in the online domain of video games so far, from someone that's maybe outside of the industry, what from a technical perspective, what transferable skills would you see for them to be right for an online role? I know you mentioned around back-end developer. Is there anything else from a tools technology perspective that may make them suitable?
For the tools development as well, because I mentioned that we sometimes work for tooling for either our designers or maybe some live support operators, customer support, etc. I think the only thing you have to keep in mind is you have to be patient first, and second, you won't get to play with the game engine that much. So if your impression of game development is rendering, shaders, and so on, that's probably not the area you want to focus.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then just on the sort of the same subject then, so somebody that has graduated university, let's say, within game development, is very focused on getting into the area of game development. Any advice that you would give to that person?
Again, I guess my biggest piece of advice here is don't hesitate and try it out. Send your CVs, check resumes of other people, check what the job description wants from you, and try to either develop those skills or at least have some pet projects which are aligned to, because obviously if you're fresh from the university, you won't have much work experience. And also keep an eye open for internships, because bigger companies often have internships. And I think we also have an internship program, right?
Yes, we do. Yeah. Awesome. And one final thing. So we've spoken about technical skills. In your opinion and your experience, what soft skills would someone need to be an effective engineer here at EA?
I wouldn't say that it's exclusive to EA, but I would say that if you want to work in games, you'll have to be a team player, because it's a team effort to work on the game, to discuss the features and such. Again, you have to be patient, because people are going to come with all sorts of bugs. None of them are always assigned to you. Not all of them always belong to you, and so on and so forth. Communication skills are very important, especially if you are joining remote. It is, I would say it's a bit harder to convey your intentions via Zoom rather than just drawing something on the board when you are in the office. So pay attention to how and what you present.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Maria, I want to thank you for your time today. Really enjoyed speaking with you, and I think your answers have been very informative. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me, Ben.
Thank you.
Cheers.